Alright guys, welcome to Coach's Corner, the best part of this stream. Today we're going to talk about a little bit about guilds. And for those of you that don't know, happy birthday Death Jesters. We just reached our 12-year milestone as a guild. Same leadership, a lot of the same members here, and for a guild to be around for 12 years is pretty much unheard of in terms of longevity and stability and all the different things we've gone through. So I do want to impart some of, some words of wisdom to other guild leaders and members and officers with regards to, what has kept guilds running for so long, right? And why sort of guilds fall apart. But yeah, I mean, guilds in general, a lot of it is just friendships. And thanks for that, President Charlie. But guilds are really about friendships and the memories you make, and I've been saying that over and over and over. And yes, as I get older, I get a little more sentimental with that kind of crap. And rating is awesome, and rankings are great, and whatever you do to make those memories, fantastic, because you're paying the 50 cents a day or $50 a month, or 120,000 gold on EU for your game time. And how do you want to spend that time? Do you want to enjoy it, or do you want to be stressed and frustrated the entire time? And being a guild leader, being an officer, a lot of that is just, sorry, we don't have time to play the game, right? Like, the time to play the game is almost non-existent, right? Because we're doing so many things in order for guilds to run successfully, right? Whether it be, reference checks, or talking about apps, or, dealing with bank issues, or we're looking at raid stuff, or we're prepping the strats, or going through logs and going through videos, talking to other people, and just doing spot checks on how different players are going or doing. There's a lot of time to just be chatting, and there's not a lot of time to actually be playing the game, which is unfortunate, but that's sort of the sacrifice you make when you're an officer or a guild leader or in some kind of leadership position in one of these guilds. And you look at some of the really successful guilds out there, right? The Methods of Serenities, the Midwinters, the Limits, whatever, right? Those are great, successful raiding guilds. But which of those guilds are going to be around for a while, right? Some are going to fall apart like Paragon, right? Through lack of recruitment, lack of finished players, and other guilds will rush to the top and then fall apart really quickly. But what players have to realize is that running guilds is not a sprint, right? Like, a raid tier is just one small part of the actual race. The actual race in itself is, well, how many tiers, how many years, how many expansions does your guild actually survive? So you look at, this one, for instance, right? I considered Emerald Nightmare to be sort of the preseason. TOV was, getting into the regular season. And then Nighthold is a bit of the playoffs, right? It's that constant progression, going further and further and further, and prepping your players for the actual proper tier, right? Which is Nighthold. Emerald Nightmare and TOV, most guilds sort of pushed by the wayside. But again, players, guilds are not about one person, right? Whether you are the best, big D DPS on that raid team, it's not about, just that one player. It's about every player on that team, right? You want to use a hockey analogy? Well, the Edmonton Oilers have won so many Stanley Cups, right? Without a solid overall team, right? From the scoring, right, the Wayne Gretzky, the DPS, to the defense, the Paul Coffeys, the healers, to the goaltending, right, Grant Fuhr during the 80s, right, those dynasty teams, right, if you don't have everything, if you don't have the leadership, the support, the DPS, the healers, the tanks all in place, well, it doesn't make for a great team, so you always have to fill those gaps, right, until, one of your best DPS leaves for another team for a girl in LA. But one thing we do as guild leaders is give our players support and opportunities to grow and constantly challenge them, right? That's something you see from me really often. I'm constantly challenging every one of my players, and it's not because I'm an asshole. People think I'm an asshole, or they see or they perceive an asshole, but it's there to constantly challenge my players. And again, guild masters are only as strong as their support staff. So my officers, my veterans, all those guys, right? They're an integral part of my team, right? Without those guys, I'd be doing everything. I'd be overwhelmed again, and it would not be a very pretty sight. Trust me. I would be going from phase 1 to phase 7 in an instant without the kind of support. So again, if you're a guild leader or you're part of a leadership team that does everything, you need to learn to delegate. There's some things that only you can do, and there's other things that pretty much anybody can do. And if you have people that have the initiative and they want to volunteer, great. Use those guys, foster them, and mentor them. You know, I mentor and I shape the veterans in my guild, right? Those are sort of the leaders and the great players in my guild. And it takes a while for me to shape those guys into what I want for a veteran. And officers, typically it takes me about 6 months from the point I decide, okay, this person has initiative, this person might be a good fit to be a support staff for me, right? They're going to be an extension of me, right? I don't need people that are going to be yes men, right? I want people that are going to challenge me, right? That aren't necessarily going to agree with me, but it can be good reasons for that too, right? Because that's what you want, right? You want to build as a leader yourself, and you don't need people just agreeing with you, right? Because you're, you know, a streamer or a guild leader or a towel leader or whatever. No, you want people to challenge you and help make those intelligent decisions. So, I have a couple. Well, I guess there's 5. I wrote it down 4 here. I have 4 sort of big pillars of running a guild, and this is important for both guild leaders as well as officers and members as well. And the first one is a very important truth. You're only as valuable to your guild as what you put in. So if you don't feel appreciated in your guild, you should put more effort into your guild. And that not being reciprocated by your guild is a whole different story, but the more you want to be appreciated by your guild, whether it be your officers, your veterans, the rest of your teammates, put more effort in, right? So if you're there helping with strats, if you're there helping with people with mythics, even though you don't need to do mythics, if you're doing stuff to increase the overall, you know, good feel and community of the guild, that's great, right? That's what you want to do. Leaders lead by example, right? Bosses just tell you what to do. A leader will show you what to do. That's a big difference. So if you're a guild leader, you show them what to do, right? Well, emulate the kind of behavior that you want from your guild members. And as players, I mean, if you want to find out what you can do to help your officer team or, you know, your GMs or whatever, then just ask. Like, I guarantee there is always something you can do to help contribute. Even in my guild, there's, you know, to-do list of 100 things I could use, you know, 100 people to help with. I guarantee there's so many things. Make the lives of your leadership, you know, ultimately easier. So you're only as valuable to your guild as what you contribute. If you are just a raider, if you just raid log, well, that is your overall worth to the guild. Sorry, that's a very pragmatic approach, but that's what it is. The second sort of pillar that I run my guild by is that I'm never really happy, right? I will constantly challenge everyone. And you see that, right? For those of you that saw our mythic kills of Scorpion, Chronomatic, and Trilliax, it was like, okay, big deal, they're dead. They're E3 easy bosses, right? Whereas other people would be celebrating, like, yeah, we finally killed a mythic boss and that kind of stuff. For me, they're fairly easy bosses, and they weren't challenging bosses, and they were not a challenging boss for the guild. Once we start getting to Spellblade, once we start getting to Croesus, that's where we're going to really be challenged on a lot of guilds or a lot of things. So if I don't see a smooth kill, that's not good enough, right? You know, somebody says, hey, you know, you ranked, they're celebrating in like 90th percentile. I'm like, oh, that's awesome. Why not 95th percentile? Oh, legendaries? That's an excuse. What can we do to make sure you have more DPS, right? How can your leadership team help you get higher DPS or better healing, or, you know, work to your overall potential? That's one question I've been asking a lot of players. Like, what can I do as a guild leader, as, you know, as part of the leadership team, to make sure you perform the best way possible, right? How can I help build you as a player and as a person? So, you know, how can you better be utilizing cooldowns, right? And how are you challenging me for my raid spot, right? I helped out the Wobble Gobble team on Zeros to Heroes last night with Heroic Gul'dan, and I was trying. Like, I put in a fair amount of effort to make sure I was, you know, beating every other healing paladin on that team. I wasn't just sort of half-assing it, but, you know, I was challenged a little bit, which was good. But yeah, like, I constantly strive for people to do better, and just killing boss isn't good enough, right? It should be a smooth kill. We should be executing really well. Not just DPS and healing, but just overall execution. We should be communicating well. There's always room for improvement, and that's what I constantly strive for. So, you know, when somebody shows me something, yeah, I'll give it an 8 out of 10. You know, to get a 10 out of 10 is, for me, is out of it nearly impossible, right? But I'm always looking for more progress, right? I want people to do better and better and better every single time. And the ones that realize that are, you know, that's good. The ones that don't realize that, they just think I'm an asshole and just yelling at them for no purpose. And they don't get the reason behind it. Okay. The third one is success is the only option. So constant forward moving progress, similar to the last one. Failing as a guild is unacceptable. Your guild is, and as a GM, is a representation of you. So my guild, representation of Death Jesters. If my guild fails, I fail. And I can't let that happen. Like, I personally cannot let that happen. And while mistakes and failures, happen within a raid or guild setting, you get a bad member, you get a bad app, you don't do really well that tier for whatever reason, failing forward is what's important. So if you make mistakes, right, if you make a mistake, just make sure you're always falling forward. So you are learning from those mistakes and improving, right? You made a bad choice with an app, okay. So what can we do next time to make sure we get better apps? Or we don't make the same mistake with that app again. Or what if it's, a raid mistake, right? What can we do next time? Well, maybe better preparation, maybe getting Vantis runes next time, maybe choosing the right bosses, maybe choosing the right kind of support system. So, success really is the only option, and what can you do to make sure you always succeed, right? We want to constantly learn from those mistakes, ensure that your guild is getting stronger after every single wipe, tier, G-kick, and mistake. So again, like even in a raid setting, if I'm wiping 100 times to every single boss and getting 1% better on that boss every time, that's success. I don't care how many times it takes. If it takes us 1,000 wipes, it takes us 1,000 wipes, right? But as long as it's constantly improving, your players are always getting better. That's what matters. So realize that success is the only option. Now, again, with success, the fourth one is celebrate success. So what does that mean? Well, if people do well, if you succeed as a guild, right? Progress is a moving target, right? Your players get better, and keep rewarding that better progress. So you have to find what method works for you, whether it's pats on the back. Sometimes it's whispers, right? People don't like public recognition, they like private recognition, right? Like they don't want to be out in the limelight. They just want to say, hey, you did a great job. Whether it's pats on the back, whispers, mount rewards, Hall of Fames, or are there opportunities for more growth, right? So if somebody shows you a lot of initiative, that, they're willing to do all this stuff and they're really great with logs, okay, well, maybe give them a little bit more responsibility, shove it their way. Maybe they're going to thrive in that kind of environment. And sometimes people don't realize that they will thrive in that kind of environment until they're put into it. And that's the choice you have to make sometimes as a GM. Just push people in the right direction, right? Give them those constant pats on the back, because the more you give them that positive reinforcement, the more they're going to do those good things. A couple good examples recently. So my guild in general, for a lot of the bosses, we've assigned certain players to building strats and going through videos and to be experts on different encounters. That's been super exceptional with quite a few players. Like the mages in my guild did Trilliax amazingly. Jungle did really well with Tichondrius, right? Our shamans had a really great setup with Croesus, and it's been really good that way. So you want to constantly give them the recognition that they need, right? And fair little secret here, people will say they don't need recognition, they don't need all that stuff, that they don't want it, but deep down, every single person needs to feel appreciated, right? You want the recognition, they want that appreciation, and whether they say they do or they don't, it doesn't matter, right? They always do, and you should always show it. So with your different players, just find out what works for them, right? Sometimes it's a nice whisper, right? Sometimes it's, telling in the middle of the raid, hey, so-and-so, that was friggin' awesome. And that's it. And the last really, I guess the most important one, and this is one that I've been using for the past 12 years, and this is the ultimate sort of big tip for guild leaders. Is this decision best for the guild? And that revolves, or really encompasses everything. So every single decision I make in a raid or a guild setting has to come down to that one line. Is this choice the best thing for the guild? Right? This player isn't working out, but we gotta kill this boss, and they're contributing so much to this boss. Do I keep them around for a little bit longer to kill the boss, and then cut them loose? What's best for the guild? Or is this person too toxic for the guild, and I need to cut them loose now, because the longer I keep them in, the more morale is going to hurt. So it's those constant decisions. When you give out loot, we've been using a loot council for forever. Promoting this person, Taking a chance on an applicant. What is best for the guild? Do I give loot to me because I'm going to be here around forever, right? Or do I give it to a DPS that is a solid DPS, and is that going to help the raid and the guild in general? Right? So when you make these decisions, don't make emotional decisions, right? Make logical, pragmatic ones. What is ultimately going to be the best for your guild? So whether that be G-kicks or promotions or whatever decisions or yelling at somebody, what is ultimately best and what's going to constantly push your guild further and stronger. And really the last thing I want to finish off this Coach's Corner with is just, couple more words of advice. When your guild struggles, and I know there's a lot of guild leaders and officers listening, when your guild struggles, or when you guys lose players to other guilds, or to real life, or whatever, right? Like my guild, we get so many apps, right? And we get a really good app once in a while, and then they get hit by a car or a bus, or they have a family issue, and it happens all the time. Like it's so frequent that it's silly, right? Shit happens. When you guys wipe hundreds of times to bosses, when you lose a guild ranking on a made-up website because WoW Progress is the most accurate one, or when you feel discouraged and as a leader, you aren't enthused about showing up to a raid. Trust me, it happens, right? Like even for me, I'll be very honest. Some days it's like, fuck, I need to show up for a raid again. Like I'd rather be spending some time with my family right now than wiping because I know we're not going to make much progress today. We'll make some progress. We don't have a great comp tonight, but I need to show up because I need to be there. I need to lead by example. So, everybody has those. And when it seems that like everyone on your raid team is unhappy and finding something to complain about, you guys have to realize that we've all been there. I've been there. I've seen every single situation. I've experienced them all. There's times when recruiting was really poor, and I had to siphon our 10-man casual team, and I had to pull some of their members into ours, just because it was a 25-person raid back in Cataclysm. I only had 22 members on my roster, including apps. It was that bad, right? So I had to pull some members in, right? There's times where this guild has hung on by a very thin thread, and there was a time where, the guild nearly collapsed because I just about had enough. And it happens, people will leave with your legendaries, right? With your Shadowmourns, with your Warglaves, whatever, or, you'll invest into an applicant or into a member, and they'll get all this loot, and then they peace out of there. It happens, right? Again, with things like that, it's better to know who you can trust than just a couple pixels. I'd rather play with people that I can trust and enjoy, raiding with, Other times, one of your intelligent raiders will see a van outside that says free flasks, and they're going to get in the van, and then what happens there. And there'll be other times where you just wipe on farm content because that is simply a bad night. So sometimes, even top guilds, it's been farm, you're going to wipe. Shit happens. People aren't perfect, and accept it. That's it. Right? People aren't perfect. They're going to make mistakes. Shit happens. Even the top guilds, I guarantee there are better guilds than what you guys are in that are wiping to encounters. So when you're getting overly frustrated with your own guilds wiping to the farm encounter once, maybe twice, realize that other guilds are doing the exact same thing, and they are much better guilds than you. So take that as improvement. But with all those situations, with all the shit that goes down with any one of those things, trust me when I say this. We've all been there, and you can recover from every one of those situations. You feel like you want to give up as a guild leader or an officer as a member, your guild is hanging on by a thread. I've done it. Okay, I've had mass exoduses back in vanilla. I've had people quit. I've had a weak roster. You will get through it. You totally will. You'll have those moments in your guild when things are going poorly, and you haven't had a playoff experience, right? Like Toronto Maple Leafs. But there'll also be those times where you're a Dynasty Stanley Cup team, where you are kicking so much ass and things are going so well. You'll always have your highs and lows as a guild. And remember that you may lose a sprint, but being part of a guild, running a guild, is a marathon. And that's Coach's Corner for this week. Thanks a lot, guys.